Welcome, I'm John, and today I'm going to tell you an exciting story. She was serving leftovers to her kids in the basement, but the rich mom finally saw it. The October sun filtered through the stained glass windows of Fairfield Preparatory Academy's gymnasium, casting fractured rainbows across the polished hardwood floor. Claire Morgan stood near the refreshment table, her manicured fingers wrapped around a paper cup of organic green tea, nodding politely as Jennifer Richardson complained about the new parking regulations. Around them, the hum of privileged voices merged into a familiar symphony. Discussions about vacation homes in the Hamptons, concerns about college prep tutors, debates over whether the school's new vegan lunch options were adequate. Claire's life had a rhythm to it, predictable and comfortable. Every Monday, yoga at Serenity Studios. Tuesdays, volunteer coordination meetings like this one. Wednesdays, tennis with the girls. Her calendar was a carefully orchestrated performance of upper-middle-class suburban motherhood, and she played her role flawlessly. Her husband, David, worked 70-hour weeks at Morrison & Associates, one of Connecticut's most prestigious law firms. Their two children, Emma and Jacob, attended the best schools, wore the best clothes, and wanted for nothing. She believed she understood struggle. She'd donated to food drives, written checks to homeless shelters, even volunteered at a soup kitchen once, though the experience had left her feeling awkwardly out of place, unsure of what to say to people whose lives seemed so far removed from her own. "Claire? Claire, are you listening?" Jennifer's voice pulled her back. "Sorry, what?" "I said we need more volunteers for cafeteria duty. Nobody wants to do it." Jennifer wrinkled her nose as if the mere mention of the cafeteria was distasteful. Claire glanced toward the sign-up sheet on the far wall. A small cluster of parents hovered around it, most signing up for the easier tasks. Library assistant, art room helper, special events coordinator. Then her eyes caught something that made her pause. A woman stood slightly apart from the group, her posture tentative, almost apologetic. She wore an oversized gray cardigan that had seen better years, sleeves pulled over her hands despite the warmth of the room. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No jewelry, no makeup. But it wasn't her appearance that held Claire's attention. It was the little girl clutching her leg. The child couldn't have been more than 5, with wide brown eyes that seemed too old for her small face. She wore a faded pink dress and sneakers that were clearly too small, the rubber soles separating from the canvas at the toes. The girl's fingers twisted in her mother's cardigan, and she watched the room with a wariness that reminded Claire of a stray animal. Alert, uncertain, ready to flee. The woman, Claire didn't know her name, signed the cafeteria duty list with quick, nervous strokes, then turned to leave. As she moved toward the exit, she kept her head down, her daughter's small hand now clasped tightly in hers. They passed within a few feet of Claire, close enough that she caught the faint smell of laundry detergent, the cheap kind that came in enormous plastic jugs. Something twisted in Claire's chest, uncomfortable and unwelcome. She couldn't name it. Not pity exactly, not curiosity. It was more like recognition, though of what? She couldn't say. "Who is that?" Claire asked Jennifer, nodding toward the departing woman. Jennifer followed her gaze and shrugged. No idea. One of the scholarship families, probably. They always take the cafeteria shifts. It includes a free lunch. The words hung in the air between them, casual and thoughtless. Jennifer had already moved on, launching into another complaint about the school's recycling program. But Claire couldn't stop watching the woman and her daughter as they disappeared through the gymnasium doors. Free lunch. The phrase echoed in her mind. She tried to shake off the feeling, returning her attention to Jennifer's monologue, smiling and nodding at the appropriate moments. But even as she drove home later in her spotless silver BMW, past the manicured lawns and colonial mansions that lined Maple Ridge Drive, past the artisan coffee shops and boutique clothing stores, she found herself thinking about that little girl's 2 small shoes. That night, as Claire prepared dinner in her granite and marble kitchen, organic chicken breast, quinoa salad, roasted vegetables, she caught her reflection in the darkened window above the sink. Beyond her own image, she could see the warm glow of her home, the abundance that surrounded her, the safety she'd always taken for granted. And for the first time in a very long time, Claire Morgan felt the weight of something she couldn't quite name pressing against the comfortable walls of her world. The following Tuesday, Claire arrived at Fairfield Prep 15 minutes early for the morning drop-off. She told herself it was because she wanted to avoid the usual traffic jam in the parking lot. But somewhere beneath that convenient excuse lay a truth she wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. She was looking for the woman from the gymnasium. Emma and Jacob tumbled out of the BMW with their designer backpacks, barely offering a goodbye before racing toward their respective entrances. Claire watched them go, then found herself scanning the crowd of arriving families. SUVs and luxury sedans lined the circular drive, parents in athleisure and business casual chatting easily with one another. Everything was so familiar, so predictable. Then she saw her. The woman walked along the sidewalk beyond the parking lot, holding the hand of the little girl in the two small shoes. With her other hand, she pushed a younger child in a battered stroller, its wheels squeaking with each rotation. They moved slowly, deliberately, as if the journey itself required careful conservation of energy. The woman's cardigan, the same gray one from last week, Claire noted, flapped in the October breeze. Claire's hand was on the door handle before she realized what she was doing. She stepped out of her car, intending to, what, say hello? Offer a ride next time? She wasn't sure. But before she could take more than a few steps, the woman had already disappeared through the school's side entrance, the one that led directly to the cafeteria. Claire, wait up. She turned to find Melissa Thornton approaching, yoga mat tucked under one arm, perfectly highlighted hair catching the morning light. Are you coming to the fundraiser committee meeting Thursday? We're finalizing the auction items. Melissa's smile was bright, practiced. Jennifer managed to get a weekend at the Chatham Bars Inn donated. Can you imagine? Claire murmured something appropriately enthusiastic, but her attention kept drifting back to that side entrance. Melissa followed her gaze. Everything okay? Fine. Do you know anything about the families on scholarship here? Melissa's expression shifted, becoming thoughtful. Not really. The school keeps that pretty private, you know. Why do you ask? No reason, just curious. But it wasn't curiosity, not exactly. Over the next week, Claire found herself noticing things she'd somehow never seen before. During the autumn festival planning meeting, she watched the woman. She'd learned her name was Lisa Carter, volunteer for setup and cleanup, the jobs that required arriving early and staying late. Lisa never spoke unless spoken to, never took the complimentary pastries that sat on the conference table, never complained when other parents left early, abandoning their assigned tasks. Claire saw Lisa's children in the cafeteria during her volunteer shift the following Wednesday. The little girl, whose name was Sophie according to her name tag, sat with the younger boy, maybe 3 years old, named Max. They ate their subsidized lunches slowly, carefully, as if trying to make each bite last. Sophie gave half of her apple slices to her brother without him asking, an automatic gesture that suggested long practice. That afternoon, as parents gathered for pickup, Claire noticed Lisa again. She stood apart from the clusters of chatting mothers, her attention focused entirely on the school doors, waiting. When Sophie emerged, Lisa's entire face transformed, the wariness melting into something soft and fierce and utterly devoted. "Mommy!" Sophie ran to her and Lisa caught her, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "How was your day, baby?" "Good. We learned about butterflies. Did you know they taste with their feet?" Lisa laughed, the sound unexpected and genuine. "I did not know that. That's amazing." Claire found herself smiling at the exchange, struck by how much love could exist in such a simple moment. But then she noticed Lisa glancing at the parents around them, at their designer handbags, their expensive sunglasses, their ease. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Lisa's shoulders drew inward slightly, her smile becoming more guarded, as if she were trying to make herself smaller, less visible. That evening, Claire couldn't stop thinking about it. As she helped Emma with homework at their custom-built desk, as she listened to Jacob describe his soccer practice, as she shared wine and small talk with David on their back patio, a question kept circling through her mind. What did it mean to be invisible in plain sight? She went to bed that night feeling restless, the comfortable certainty of her world somehow less solid than it had been just weeks before. In the darkness of her bedroom, surrounded by 1,000-thread-count sheets and climate-controlled comfort, Claire stared at the ceiling and wondered what it would be like to count every dollar, to ration every meal, to wear the same cardigan week after week, because there was nothing else. The thought should have made her feel grateful for what she had. Instead, it made her feel ashamed that she'd never really looked before. The rain came on a Thursday afternoon, sudden and relentless, transforming the October sky into a sheet of gray. Claire sat in the school parking lot, watching water stream down her windshield, waiting for the downpour to ease before making the short dash to retrieve Jacob from his after-school art club. Most parents had already come and gone, their children safely buckled into warm, dry vehicles. Through the distorted glass, she saw movement near the side entrance. 2 small figures and 1 larger one emerging into the storm. Claire leaned forward, squinting. Lisa Carter walked with determined purpose. Sophie pressed close against her side, while Max sat in the stroller, now covered haphazardly with what looked like plastic grocery bags secured with rubber bands. Lisa wore the same gray cardigan, soaked through within seconds, clinging to her thin frame. No umbrella, no raincoat, nothing. Claire's hand moved to her own umbrella in the passenger seat, an expensive automatic model David had bought her last Christmas. She grabbed it and pushed open her car door, rain immediately pelting her face. "Lisa, wait!" But either Lisa didn't hear her over the sound of the storm, or she chose not to stop. Claire watched as they continued down the sidewalk, Lisa's free hand gripping the stroller handle, her back bent against the wind. Sophie's small legs struggled to keep pace, her inadequate shoes splashing through puddles, soaking her already wet socks. Claire stood in the rain, umbrella unopened in her hand, feeling utterly helpless. By the time she thought to get in her car and offer them a ride, they had already turned the corner, disappearing from view. That image haunted her for days. She mentioned it to David that evening as they prepared dinner together, her voice carefully casual. "I saw one of the mothers from school walking in the rain today, with her kids. No umbrella, no car. They were completely drenched." David glanced up from the salad he was tossing. "That's rough. Weather's supposed to get worse this week, too. Don't you think we should, I don't know, do something?" "Like what?" He reached for the olive oil, his tone conversational rather than dismissive. "You can't save everyone, Claire. There are systems in place for people who need help. Social services, welfare programs, food banks, that's what they're for. But what if those systems aren't enough?" David paused, studying her with the same analytical gaze he used in the courtroom. "What's really going on here? You've been distracted lately." Claire wanted to explain the feeling that had been growing inside her, the sense that she'd been living behind glass, watching the world but never truly seeing it. But she didn't have the words yet, so she just shrugged. "I guess I just want to understand." Over the weekend, Claire found herself researching poverty statistics in Connecticut, scrolling through articles about working poor families, single mothers struggling to afford housing and childcare. The numbers were staggering, the stories heartbreaking. She'd lived her entire adult life less than an hour from Hartford, one of the poorest cities in America, and she'd somehow never really registered that fact. On Monday, she made a decision. During the morning drop-off, Claire deliberately positioned herself near the cafeteria entrance. When Lisa arrived with her children, Claire approached with what she hoped was a friendly, non-threatening smile. "Hi, I'm Claire. Our kids go here together." Lisa's expression became wary, defensive. "I know who you are." The words carried no hostility, just statement of fact, but Claire felt the distance between them like a physical barrier. She pressed on anyway. "I was wondering if you'd like to get coffee sometime. There's a diner on Maple Street." "I can't." Lisa's response was immediate, automatic. "Maybe next week then. My treat. I don't need charity." Lisa's voice remained quiet, but there was steel beneath it. She gathered Sophie's hand more tightly. "Thank you, but no." Claire watched them walk away, feeling foolish and presumptuous. Who was she to insert herself into this woman's life? What made her think her attention was welcome or wanted? But something Jennifer Richardson had said weeks ago kept echoing in her mind. There are always people like that. People like that. As if poverty were a character trait rather than a circumstance. As if struggling meant being somehow less than, rather than simply being human in difficult conditions. That night Claire lay awake again. David's steady breathing beside her, a reminder of the security she'd always taken for granted. She thought about Lisa walking in the rain, about Sophie's 2 small shoes, about the plastic bags protecting Max from the storm. She thought about the look in Lisa's eyes when Claire had offered coffee, not gratitude, but guardedness, pride mixed with exhaustion. And Claire realized something that should have been obvious from the start. If she truly wanted to help, she would need to do more than offer. She would need to earn the right to be let in. The question was how. Claire's opportunity came 2 weeks later during the annual school book fair. She'd signed up to help organize the event, arriving early to arrange displays and price stickers. The library smelled of new paper and possibility, colorful covers promising adventure and escape. Parent volunteers chatted while they worked, their conversations floating between complaints about the PTA president and plans for Thanksgiving vacation. Lisa appeared an hour into the shift, slipping through the door with an apologetic mumble about traffic. She'd signed up for the afternoon slot, the one nobody else wanted because it ran late and required staying to pack up. Claire watched as Lisa immediately set to work, reorganizing the chapter books with quiet efficiency, never pausing, never socializing. "These should be alphabetized by author, not title," Jennifer announced to no one in particular, eyeing Lisa's section with thinly veiled criticism. Lisa's shoulders tensed, but she simply nodded. "I'll fix it." "Actually," Claire interjected, moving closer, "I think the way Lisa organized it makes more sense for kids. They usually remember titles better than author names." Jennifer shrugged and moved on. Lisa glanced at Claire, surprise flickering across her features before she returned her attention to the books. But something had shifted, a crack in the wall, almost imperceptible. As the afternoon wore on, the other volunteers gradually departed, citing dinner preparations and carpool schedules. Soon, only Claire and Lisa remained, working in companionable silence. Claire found herself stealing glances at Lisa, noticing details she'd missed before. The way her hands moved with practiced care, the concentration in her expression, the slight wince when she bent to lift heavy boxes, as if her body carried pains she'd learned to ignore. "Thank you," Lisa said suddenly, her voice soft. "For earlier, with Jennifer." Claire straightened from the display she'd been arranging. "She can be particular. She can be mean." Lisa's honesty was unexpected, almost refreshing. "But I guess when you have money you can afford to be." The words hung between them, not quite accusatory but uncomfortably close. Claire felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Not everyone with money is mean." "No," Lisa agreed. "But everyone with money has the luxury of not having to care what people think of them. That must be nice." It wasn't said with bitterness exactly, more like observation, as if Lisa were describing the properties of a substance she'd only read about but never touched. Claire wanted to argue, to defend herself and her life, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the truth in Lisa's words, or maybe it was the exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "Can I give you a ride home?" Claire asked instead. "It's getting dark and I know you walked." Lisa hesitated, her jaw tightening. It's not charity," Claire interrupted gently. "It's just a ride. I'm going that direction anyway." It was a lie. Claire had no idea which direction Lisa lived, but something in her tone must have convinced Lisa, because after a long moment she nodded. "Okay, thank you." They gathered Sophie and Max from the aftercare room, both children sleepy-eyed and quiet. Claire's BMW felt suddenly ostentatious as they approached it, the leather seats and ambient lighting seeming excessive, almost embarrassing. Lisa buckled Max into Jacob's booster seat with practiced efficiency, while Sophie climbed into the back, her eyes wide as she took in the car's interior. "It's like a spaceship," Sophie whispered. "Where to?" Claire asked, starting the engine. Lisa gave an address on the east side of town, an area Claire had driven past but never through. As they navigated the darkening streets, the landscape gradually changed. Manicured lawns gave way to smaller yards, colonial mansions to modest homes, then to buildings that leaned slightly, paint peeling, porches sagging under years of neglect. "Here," Lisa said finally, pointing to a duplex that looked one strong wind away from collapse. "The back entrance." Claire pulled into the narrow driveway, her headlights illuminating cracked concrete and overgrown weeds. Lisa unbuckled Max quickly, efficiently, her movements suggesting she wanted this interaction to end as soon as possible. "Thank you for the ride," she said, opening the door. "Lisa, wait." Claire surprised herself with the urgency in her voice. I know you said no before, but would you consider having coffee with me?" "Really? No charity, no agenda, just coffee." Lisa stood in the open doorway, cold air rushing in, her children waiting behind her. In the glow of the dome light, Claire saw something shift in her expression. A war between pride and something else, something that might have been loneliness. "Why?" Lisa asked. "Why do you care?" It was the question Claire had been asking herself for weeks. And suddenly, standing there in the driveway of this crumbling duplex, she knew the answer. "Because I want to understand," she said honestly. "I want to see." Lisa studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Saturday, 10 o'clock. The diner on Maple Street, but I'm buying my own coffee." "Okay," Claire agreed, relief flooding through her. Saturday. The Maple Street diner occupied a corner lot between a laundromat and a check-cashing store, its faded red awning and neon sign promising breakfast all day. Claire arrived 10 minutes early, parking her BMW between a rusted pickup and a Honda with a cracked windshield. Through the smudged windows, she could see vinyl booths patched with duct tape and a counter lined with chrome stools. She'd never been inside before. Lisa arrived exactly at 10, pushing Max's stroller and holding Sophie's hand. She'd dressed carefully, Claire noticed. A clean sweater that wasn't the gray cardigan, jeans without visible holes, her hair pulled back neatly. The effort spoke volumes about what this meeting meant to her. They settled into a corner booth, Sophie coloring on the paper placemat, while Max dozed in his stroller. A waitress with tired eyes and comfortable shoes appeared, order pad ready. "Coffee, please," Claire said. "And whatever you'd like," she added, looking at Lisa. Lisa's jaw tightened. "Just hot water with lemon." The waitress left, and an awkward silence descended. Claire searched for the right words, something that wouldn't sound condescending or presumptuous. Lisa saved her the trouble. "You want to know my story," she said flatly. "That's why we're here." "I want to know you," Claire corrected gently. "There's a difference." Lisa studied her for a long moment, then leaned back against the cracked vinyl. "Okay, what do you want to know?" "How did you end up?" Claire faltered, uncertain how to phrase it without sounding judgmental. "Poor?" Lisa finished for her, a bitter smile playing at her lips. "You can say it. It's not a dirty word." She paused as the waitress returned with their drinks. Claire's coffee in a heavy ceramic mug, Lisa's hot water in a chipped cup with a lemon wedge balanced on the rim. Lisa squeezed the lemon slowly, deliberately, as if gathering her thoughts. "I was a daycare teacher. Not great money, but enough. My husband, ex-husband, worked construction. We had an apartment, not much, but it was ours. Then Max was born premature. 6 weeks early, respiratory problems, 3 weeks in the NICU." She said it matter-of-factly, but Claire saw her hands tighten around the cup. The bills started piling up. Insurance covered some, but not all. My husband couldn't handle it. The stress, the debt, the nights Max wouldn't stop crying. One day, I came home from the hospital, and he was just gone. Clothes, truck, everything. He left a note saying he couldn't do it anymore. Sophie looked up from her coloring, and Lisa automatically reached out to stroke her daughter's hair. A gesture of reassurance, of presence. That was 2 years ago. I tried to keep working, but I couldn't afford childcare for 2 kids on a daycare salary. That's ironic, right? I taught other people's kids, but couldn't afford someone to watch my own. Claire wanted to say something, but her throat felt tight. Lisa continued, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. "I lost the apartment, moved in with a friend, but that fell apart after a few months. Then we stayed at a shelter for a while, but it wasn't safe. Too many people, too much chaos. Max kept getting sick." She took a sip of her lemon water. "The duplex basement isn't much, but it's ours. The landlord lets me clean apartments in the building to cover part of the rent. The rest I piece together. Odd jobs, food stamps, you see for Max. Sophie qualifies for the free lunch program at school. What about social services? Welfare programs?" Claire heard David's words coming from her own mouth and immediately regretted them. Lisa's expression hardened. "You think I haven't tried? There are waiting lists, requirements, paperwork that takes months to process. You need an address, but you can't get an address without money. You need childcare to work, but you need work to afford childcare. It's a cycle, and once you're in it, getting out feels impossible." The diner hummed around them. The clatter of dishes, conversations at other tables, the hiss of the coffee machine. Normal life continuing while Lisa described a reality Claire had never imagined. "I'm not lazy," Lisa said quietly, her eyes meeting Claire's with fierce dignity. "I work harder than I ever have. I just work at being invisible, at surviving, at making sure my kids don't feel the weight of what we don't have." "I never thought you were lazy," Claire said, meaning it. "Didn't you?" Lisa's question wasn't accusatory, just honest. "Even a little? When you first saw me?" Claire wanted to lie, to insist she'd never judged, never made assumptions, but Lisa deserved better than comfortable falsehoods. "Maybe," she admitted. "I'm ashamed to say it, but maybe I did. Not consciously, but I didn't understand. I still don't, not really, but I want to." Lisa's expression softened slightly. "Why?" "Because," Claire said slowly, "I've been living my whole life thinking I understood the world, and I'm starting to realize I've only understood my small corner of it." For the first time, Lisa smiled. Small, tentative, but genuine. "That's more honest than most people would be." Their coffee meetings became a Saturday ritual. Claire found herself looking forward to those hours at the Maple Street diner with an anticipation that surprised her. Lisa remained guarded, but slowly, incrementally, she began to share more. Not just the facts of her struggle, but the texture of it, the way she calculated every purchase down to the penny, the strategy required to make a box of cereal last 10 days instead of 7, the particular shame of avoiding eye contact at the grocery store when her EBT card declined. "People look at you differently when you pull out food stamps," Lisa said one Saturday, watching Sophie and Max share a single order of pancakes, the only food Lisa had allowed Claire to buy for them after weeks of gentle insistence. "Like you're cheating somehow, taking something that isn't yours." Claire had never thought about it before, but now she found herself noticing things she'd been blind to her entire life. The way cashiers' expressions changed, the impatient sighs of people waiting in line, the assumptions embedded in every interaction. Their friendship, because that's what it was becoming, existed in a strange liminal space. At school, Lisa still kept her distance, still volunteered for the thankless jobs, still made herself small among the other parents. But on Saturdays, in the worn booth at the diner, they talked like equals. Lisa told stories about her children with a fierce love that made Claire's heart ache. Claire shared her own doubts and fears, the pressure to maintain appearances, the loneliness of a life that looked perfect from the outside but often felt hollow. "You know what's funny?" Lisa said one morning in late November, stirring her eternal cup of hot water with lemon. "I used to think people like you had it all figured out, like money solved everything." "It solves a lot," Claire admitted, "but not everything." "No," Lisa agreed, "but it solves the things that keep you up at night. Whether you can feed your kids, whether you'll have heat in the winter, whether your daughter's shoes will last another month." She paused. "Your problems are real too. I'm not saying they're not, but they're different." It was the most direct Lisa had been about the gulf between their circumstances, and Claire appreciated the honesty even as it stung. "I want to help," Claire said, not for the first time. "Really help, not just coffee on Saturdays." Lisa's expression closed slightly. "I told you. I know. No charity. But what if it's not charity? What if it's just friends helping friends? Friends with money helping friends without it is called charity, Claire." The words landed between them, gentle but firm. Claire wanted to argue, to insist there was a difference, but she knew Lisa was right. Any help she offered would be colored by their economic disparity, no matter how pure her intentions. That week, Claire couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. She found herself researching job opportunities, housing programs, childcare options, anything that might create a bridge rather than a handout. On Wednesday, during her volunteer shift at the school cafeteria, she struck up a conversation with the director, mentioning Lisa's background in early childhood education. "We could actually use someone," the director said thoughtfully. "One of our assistants just gave notice. It's part-time, but the pay's decent, and employees' kids eat free." Claire's heart raced. "Would you consider interviewing her? If she's interested, have her call me." That Saturday, Claire arrived at the diner with a carefully rehearsed speech about the job opportunity, ready to present it as simple information rather than intervention. But when she saw Lisa's face, drawn and pale, shadows under her eyes deeper than usual, the words died in her throat. "What's wrong?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around her cup as if drawing warmth from it. Sophie and Max sat unusually still beside her, their usual energy subdued. "The landlord raised the rent," Lisa finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. $50 a month, effective January 1st. To Claire, $50 was a dinner out, a new sweater from Nordstrom, an afterthought. To Lisa, it was clearly catastrophic. "Can you pay it?" Lisa shook her head slowly. "I'm already behind. I've been cleaning extra apartments, but it's not enough. He said if I can't pay, we need to be out by the end of December." The diner sounds faded into background noise. Claire's mind raced through possibilities, solutions, offers of help that she knew Lisa wouldn't accept. "There's a job," she blurted out. "At the school, in the cafeteria, part-time, but it has benefits. Free meals for employees' kids. The director said she'd interview you." Lisa looked up sharply. "You arranged this?" "I mentioned you," Claire admitted. "But the need is real. They're actually hiring. It's not charity, Lisa. It's a real job." Lisa studied her for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Pride warred with desperation, dignity with necessity. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll call her." It was the first time Lisa had accepted Claire's help. and the weight of that trust settled over both of them like a covenant, fragile, precious, and impossible to break without consequence. Lisa got the job. The cafeteria director called her 2 days after the interview, offering her 25 hours a week at $12 an hour. It wasn't wealth, but it was stability, a paycheck she could count on, health insurance after 90 days, and meals for Sophie and Max included. Lisa accepted with a professionalism that masked the desperate relief Claire glimpsed in her eyes when she shared the news. "I start Monday," Lisa told her during their Saturday meeting, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled without reservation. "Thank you. I know you made this happen." "You made it happen," Claire corrected. "You earned it." But even as Lisa's employment situation stabilized, the housing crisis loomed. $50 might as well have been $500. There was simply no room in her budget, no matter how she manipulated the numbers. Claire watched Lisa's anxiety mount as December approached, saw the calculations happening behind her eyes during every conversation. One evening, Claire brought it up with David over dinner. Their kitchen was warm, the smell of roasted chicken filling the air. Jacob and Emma doing homework at the dining table just beyond the doorway. "What if we helped her with the rent increase?" Claire said, keeping her voice casual. "Just for a few months until she gets on her feet." David set down his wine glass, his lawyer's mind already parsing the implications. "How much?" $50 a month. That's $600 a year. What happens when we stop? She'll be right back where she started, but now dependent on our help. So we don't stop. Or we help her find better housing. Or, Claire, David's tone was gentle but firm. You can't save her. You can be her friend. You can support her. But you can't fix this. This is systemic. One person's rent payment doesn't change the fact that she's trapped in a cycle of poverty. So what? We just do nothing? Claire heard the frustration in her own voice. We just watch her lose her home because we believe in systems? I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying be smart about it. If you want to help her build actual stability, a resume for better jobs, references, skills training, not just a monthly check that makes you feel better. The words stung because they contained truth. Claire wanted to help, yes, but she also wanted the immediate gratification of solving the problem, of being the hero. David's skepticism forced her to examine her own motivations, and she didn't entirely like what she found. That Saturday, Claire approached the conversation differently. She brought a notebook and asked Lisa about her goals, her skills, her dreams before everything fell apart. I wanted to run my own daycare someday, Lisa admitted, her voice soft with the vulnerability of sharing an old dream. A good one, where kids felt safe and parents didn't have to choose between working and affording care. I know how broken the system is. I lived it. What would you need to make that happen? Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. About 10,000 things I don't have. Education, credentials, money for licensing, a space, insurance. It's impossible. What if it wasn't? Claire leaned forward. What if we broke it down into steps? Real, achievable steps. Why are you doing this? Lisa's question was sudden, direct. Really. You could be having brunch with Jennifer and Melissa right now. You could be at yoga or shopping or any of the 100 things you people do. Why are you sitting in this diner with me? The question hung between them, demanding honesty. Claire thought about the easy answer. Compassion, kindness, wanting to help. But Lisa deserved more than platitudes. Because you changed how I see the world, Claire said finally. Before I met you, I thought I understood struggle. I thought I was aware, conscious, empathetic. But I was living in a bubble, Lisa. A comfortable bubble where poverty was something that happened to other people, somewhere else. You showed me it's right here, 3 blocks from my house, in the school my kids attend. And once I saw it, really saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Lisa's eyes glistened. You feel guilty? Yes, Claire admitted, but it's more than that. I feel responsible. Not for causing your situation, but for ignoring it. For all the times I walked past someone struggling and told myself it wasn't my problem. For believing the myth that people who work hard succeed, and therefore people who struggle must not be working hard enough. I'm not your redemption project, Lisa said quietly. I know, and I'm not trying to fix you. You don't need fixing. The system does. But maybe, Claire hesitated, then pressed on. Maybe we can help each other. You teach me about reality. I help you build toward that daycare dream. Not charity. Partnership. Lisa was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing patterns on the worn Formica table. Max stirred in his stroller and she reached down automatically to rock him back to sleep, the gesture so practiced it required no thought. Partnership, she repeated, testing the word. What would that even look like? I don't know, Claire said honestly, but I think we figure it out together. Lisa looked at her children, then back at Claire. Okay, she said finally. Let's try. The first step was simple. Claire helped Lisa update her resume. They spent an evening at the public library, neutral territory Lisa had insisted, not Claire's house, translating Lisa's scattered work history into something that looked professional and intentional. Claire had connections at several local businesses through David's firm, and within 2 weeks, Lisa had interviews lined up for weekend administrative work that could supplement her cafeteria income. But the immediate crisis remained. The rent increase and the arrears Lisa had already accumulated. December was 2 weeks away, and the landlord had made his position clear: pay in full or leave. Claire wanted desperately to write a check to solve the problem with the ease that money provided. But she remembered David's words, and more importantly, she remembered Lisa's fierce pride. Instead, she did something else. I need help, Claire said during their Saturday meeting, and Lisa looked up in surprise. I'm serious. I'm organizing a winter clothing drive for the school, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I need someone who actually understands what families in need require, not just what we privileged people think they need. Lisa's eyes narrowed slightly. Is this a real thing or a made-up job? It's real. Jennifer Richardson was supposed to handle it, but she bailed. The school will pay a small stipend for coordination, $500. I don't need the money, but you do. And you'd actually do a better job than me. It was true, all of it. Though Claire had perhaps exaggerated Jennifer's commitment to the project. Lisa studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but I do the work, real work. I'm not taking money for nothing. I wouldn't expect anything less. Over the next 2 weeks, Claire watched Lisa transform the clothing drive from a haphazard collection of cast-offs into an organized distribution system. Lisa knew exactly what was needed: winter coats in children's sizes, thermal underwear, waterproof boots, warm socks. She created a dignified system where families could shop privately rather than being handed charity bags in front of others. She recruited other parents who'd been invisible in the PTA, giving them voice and purpose. The drive was held on a cold Saturday in mid-December. Claire arrived early to help Lisa set up tables in the gymnasium, organizing clothes by size and type. Other families began trickling in. Some Claire recognized from school, others she'd never seen before. Lisa moved among them with easy competence, offering suggestions without judgment, laughing with children, treating everyone with the respect she'd been denied so often herself. You're good at this, Claire said during a quiet moment. I know what it's like, Lisa replied simply. To need help, but want dignity. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, but most people treat them like they are. Watching Lisa work, Claire saw something she'd missed before. Not just a woman struggling to survive, but a woman with skills, vision, and a deep well of empathy earned through experience. The daycare dream wasn't impossible. It was actually perfect. That evening, after the drive ended and they'd packed away the remaining items for the school's emergency closet, Lisa handed Claire an envelope. What's this? My first month's rent payment. In full, including the increase. I got paid for the coordination work, picked up extra cafeteria shifts, and the administrative job starts next week. Lisa's voice was steady, but Claire heard the emotion beneath it. I did it myself. Well, mostly. With a little help from a friend. Claire opened the envelope, seeing the money order made out to Lisa's landlord. Lisa, this is amazing. I'm still behind on the arrears, Lisa admitted. But the landlord agreed to a payment plan if I stay current. I think we're going to be okay. For the first time in 2 years, I think we might actually be okay. They stood in the empty gymnasium, the echo of the day's voices still seeming to hang in the air. Claire felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the privilege of witnessing this moment, not solving it for Lisa, but standing beside her as she solved it herself. There's something else, Lisa said, her voice uncertain. I've been thinking about what you said, about the daycare, and I wondered would you want to come see where I live? I mean, really see it. The basement, where Sophie and Max sleep, where I cook. I think if we're going to be partners, real partners, you should know exactly what you're partnering with. The invitation was both a gift and a test. Claire understood immediately. This was Lisa's way of maintaining honesty between them, of refusing to let their friendship exist only in the neutral territory of diners and school events. I'd be honored, Claire said quietly. Tomorrow? Lisa's voice wavered slightly. Before I lose my nerve. Tomorrow. That night, Claire lay awake, wondering what she would see. What truths waited in that basement. She'd glimpsed Lisa's struggle from the outside, heard the stories, imagined the conditions. But tomorrow, she would truly witness it. And something told her that what she saw would change everything. Claire arrived at the duplex on Sunday afternoon, parking her BMW on the cracked driveway with a self-consciousness that made her hands shake slightly on the steering wheel. The building looked worse in daylight, peeling paint exposing rotted wood beneath, a gutter hanging loose from the roofline, windows covered with sheets instead of curtains. She'd driven past places like this her entire life without really seeing them. Now, knowing Lisa and her children lived here, each detail felt like an accusation. Lisa met her at the side entrance, a rusted metal door that groaned when she pushed it open. "It's down here," she said simply, leading Claire down a narrow staircase with concrete steps worn smooth in the centers. The smell hit her first, mildew and dampness mixed with the chemical tang of cheap cleaning products. Then the cold, seeping through her coat despite the winter chill being worse outside than in. The basement was a single room, perhaps 15 feet by 20. A bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows. Against one wall stood a hot plate on a card table, Lisa's kitchen. Beside it, a small dorm refrigerator hummed loudly. 2 mattresses lay on the concrete floor, covered with blankets Claire recognized from the clothing drive. A plastic storage bin served as Sophie's dresser, her few clothes folded neatly inside. Max's clothes hung in a garbage bag from a nail in the wall. There was no bathroom. Lisa gestured vaguely upward. "We share the one upstairs with the tenant. He works nights, so it's not too bad." Sophie sat on one of the mattresses, playing with a doll whose hair had been cut short, probably to hide how matted it had become. Max slept in a playpen that looked older than he was, its fabric sides stained and sagging. The only decoration was a drawing Sophie had made, taped carefully to the cinderblock wall. A house with a big sun and stick figures holding hands. Claire stood frozen, her throat tight. She'd imagined poverty abstractly, intellectually. But this was the reality of it. The cold that made Sophie sleep in her coat. The hot plate that meant no real meals, just things that could be heated quickly. The concrete floor that would hurt to walk on barefoot, to sit on, to live on. "This is where I served them the leftovers," Lisa said quietly, pointing to the card table. "From the school cafeteria. I'd bring home what would have been thrown away. Half-eaten sandwiches, fruit that was bruised but still good, whatever they'd let me take. I'd heat it up on the hot plate and serve it like it was a real meal." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Claire heard the shame beneath it. Not shame in what she'd done, but shame that she'd had to do it. "Sophie never complained," Lisa continued. "She'd eat whatever I put in front of her and tell Max how good it was, making it into a game. She's 5 years old and she already knows how to pretend everything is fine." Claire's vision blurred with tears. "Lisa, don't," Lisa interrupted gently. "Don't apologize or say how sorry you are. That's not why I brought you here. I brought you here because if we're going to do this, really do this, build something together, you need to see what rock bottom looks like. Not as a story or a concept, but as a place where real people sleep and eat and try to hold on to their humanity." Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. She walked slowly around the space, taking in the details Lisa had worked so hard to create. The library books stacked neatly in a corner, borrowed and returned religiously. The small area rug, threadbare but clean, that covered part of the cold floor. The way Lisa had organized their few possessions with a care that spoke of dignity, maintained against impossible odds. "You keep it so clean," Claire whispered. "Clean is free," Lisa replied. "So is organized. I can't give my kids much, but I can give them that. A sense that we're not just surviving, we're still living." Sophie looked up from her doll. "Mommy, can Miss Claire stay for dinner?" Lisa's expression tightened. The automatic calculation of whether she had enough food, whether extending an invitation would mean someone going hungry later. Claire saw it all play across her face in an instant. "Actually," Claire said quickly, "I was hoping you all might come to my house for dinner. Emma and Jacob have been asking about Sophie, and David's grilling steaks. There's way too much food." It was a clumsy offer, too obviously engineered, but Lisa didn't call her on it. Instead, she looked at her children, Sophie hopeful, Max sleeping peacefully despite the cold, and nodded. "Okay," she said, "but we're bringing dessert. I can make cookies on the hot plate." "Deal." Claire agreed, understanding what Lisa was really saying. I'll accept your invitation, but I won't come empty-handed. I'm still a person with something to offer. As they climbed back up the concrete stairs, leaving the basement behind, Claire felt the weight of what she'd witnessed settle into her bones. She'd seen Lisa's reality now, truly seen it, and she understood with perfect clarity that partnership meant more than helping someone climb out of a hole. It meant acknowledging that the hole shouldn't exist in the first place. Spring arrived in Connecticut with sudden grace, transforming the gray landscape into something alive and hopeful. Claire stood in her kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows, watching through the glass as Sophie and Emma played in the backyard. 5 months had passed since that afternoon in the basement, 5 months that had changed everything. Lisa had moved out of the duplex in February into a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the north side of town. It wasn't luxury, but it had heat, a real kitchen, and a bathroom they didn't have to share. The administrative job had led to a full-time position with benefits. The cafeteria work continued part-time, supplementing her income and keeping Sophie and Max fed. Lisa was saving money now, actually saving, putting aside dollars each week toward a future that was beginning to look possible rather than impossible. But the real transformation had happened between them. Their friendship had deepened into something neither could have predicted. Lisa helped Claire see the world with new eyes. The invisible struggles happening in plain sight, the systems designed to keep people trapped, the difference between charity and solidarity. Claire, in turn, had become Lisa's advocate and connector, introducing her to people who could help, opening doors that had been closed, using her privilege as a bridge rather than a barrier. Together, they'd started researching what it would take to open a daycare center. It was still years away, still required resources neither had fully secured, but it was no longer a fantasy. It was a plan, written in notebooks they filled during Saturday meetings that still happened at the Maple Street Diner, though now they sometimes met at each other's homes too. The doorbell rang, pulling Claire from her thoughts. She opened it to find Lisa standing there with a bottle of wine, not expensive but not the cheapest either, and a genuine smile. "Ready for this?" Lisa asked. Today was Sophie's 6th birthday party. Not a basement celebration with hot plate cookies, but a real party in Claire's backyard with decorations, games, and a cake from the bakery on Main Street. Lisa had hesitated when Claire suggested hosting, worried about accepting too much, about becoming dependent. But Claire had learned how to frame things differently now. Sophie and Emma are best friends, she'd said. Let me do this for them, not for you. Let me give my daughter the gift of celebrating someone she loves. Lisa had agreed, understanding that friendship meant allowing others to give, not just always being the one in need. The party was small. Sophie, Emma, Jacob, Max, a few classmates from school, and their parents. Some of those parents were from Claire's old circle. Others were families Lisa had connected with through her work. Claire watched them mingle, conversation flowing naturally, boundaries dissolving in the simple joy of children's laughter. Jennifer Richardson had declined the invitation with a thinly veiled excuse about prior commitments. Claire had expected that. Some people weren't ready to see beyond their comfort zones. She'd been one of them once. As the afternoon wore on, Claire found herself standing beside Lisa, watching Sophie blow out candles on a princess cake, her face radiant with happiness. "Thank you," Lisa said quietly, "for all of this, for seeing us." "Thank you for letting me," Claire replied, "for trusting me enough to let me in." Lisa turned to look at her, something shifting in her expression, the last wall finally coming down. "You know what I realized? That day you came to the basement, I thought you'd see it and run, that you'd realize how broken everything was and decide it was too much, too complicated, too uncomfortable. But you didn't run, you stayed, and that changed everything." "I couldn't run," Claire said honestly. "Not after I really saw. Not after I understood that the basement wasn't just your story, it was our story. Yours because you lived it, mine because I'd ignored it. We're connected, Lisa. All of us are. We just pretend we're not because it's easier." David appeared beside them, carrying Max, who'd fallen asleep on his shoulder. "I think someone's done with the party," he said with a gentle smile. He'd been skeptical at first, but over the months he'd watched his wife transform, and in turn, he'd changed too. He'd started doing pro bono legal work for families facing eviction, using his expertise to fight the systems he'd once defended. "I should get them home," Lisa said, but there was no urgency in her voice, no desperate need to leave before overstaying her welcome. "Or you could stay," Claire offered. "We could order pizza. Let the kids play until they collapse. No rushing, no schedules, just time. Lisa smiled, that full, unguarded smile that had become more common, but never lost its power to move Claire. Okay, let's stay. As evening descended and the yard filled with fireflies, Claire watched her children play with Lisa's children, watched David talk easily with Lisa about her daycare plans, watched the life they were building together. Not perfect, not simple, but real and honest and full of hope. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing in that gymnasium, uncomfortable with Lisa's presence, not yet willing to see. That woman felt like a stranger now. The basement had been a crucible, burning away Claire's illusions about the world and herself. But from those ashes, something stronger had emerged. Not just a friendship, but a commitment to see, to witness, to stand beside rather than above. Lisa had been serving leftovers to her children in a basement, hidden from a world that preferred not to look. But Claire had looked. She had finally, truly seen. And in seeing, she had been transformed just as profoundly as the woman she'd set out to help. The real gift, Claire understood now, hadn't been what she'd given Lisa. It had been what Lisa had given her. The courage to step outside her comfortable bubble and into the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of someone else's life. That courage had changed everything. And it was only the beginning. The end. Did you like this story? Would you have done anything differently? Tell me in the comments. See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe now to receive more exciting stories that you won't want to miss. Thank you very much.